Hi, so today is the 22nd of May, 2021. And earlier this week in May, around, I think it was it was possibly it was this last week when Austin legislation was still in session or getting ready to come to a close. And as it's been reported, as many news stations have reported across the United States of America in regards to Washington, D.C. and the deployment of the National Guard out in the vicinity. When going to Austin, the capital in Texas, there's National Guard who's deployed. Again, there are multiple news sources on this. Here's the thing though. By UCMJ standards, not only has Governor Abbott, the lieutenant governor, and all the other officials that chose to deploy the National Guard unit to the Texas state capitol actually abused their power to do so, because the requirements of what is considered an actual emergency for the National Guard of any state, let alone for the entire United States of America, is not to be wasted on things such as the legislative problems in Austin, for example, as to whether or not they feel like paying their police officers. Because if you want to defund the police, but then deploy the National Guard unit, Governor Abbott and Lieutenant Governor and other legislators in the Austin state capitol, are you saying that you are signaling to your local police department that you are putting in the National Guard so that way you don't actually have to make genuine commentary and propose genuine, actual repairs to the situation where you have been allowing what has gone on in regards of the rioting and protesting last year and the year before and so on and so forth in reference to the defunding of the police? Because again, the National Guard units are not to be deployed because you legislators have not been able to step forward and actually stand with the police officers who are actually the ones who were employed to keep the area safe. So is it that you have absolutely no faith in the police officers that are Austin police officers, for that example, or in Washington, D.C., you have no faith in your own Washington, D.C. Police Department, that you are deploying the National Guard units who are not actually meant for that. They are meant to actually be utilized in their training, starting from basic training, not their specialty. Their specialties are the other stuff, their basic training. You who have chosen to use them as your pawns because you, in my opinion, and I doubt that I'm the only one, you, whoever has made those decisions, signed those pieces of paper, have quietly, again, in my opinion, slapped every law enforcement officer in the face by having that, while at the same time slapping every National Guard in the face, as well as every active duty National Guard in other areas, and reservists and veterans. Because obviously it doesn't take a head injury to figure that out, Governor Abbott. Just because you are not strong enough to make your points known in a genuine way, telling the truth, and not for a photo op, not for, what looks pretty, but reality. You have police officers for that. And you can pay for your own private security instead of taking the taxpayers' money from the state of Texas, as well as federal funding, because of your choices not to take a correct stand to back the blue. The military is not to replace the local and state officers. If you continue to choose that, also Washington, D.C., then you are choosing to bring forward martial law throughout the United States of America. this is your last warning on that, because especially with the summer coming up, you should probably get that taken care of, in my opinion. But what do I know? I'm just medically retired from the Army branch of the United States of America's Armed Forces. And since I did not graduate basic training because of my medical retirement, I cannot give that actual fullness of where there are those who can. But you do have the National Guard headquarters in Austin. How convenient, right? Wasn't that so convenient of a placement to see whether or not people in Austin would be arrogant to abuse their power? That by technicalities, you were just like those mandates. You were just signed by a piece of paper in. Whereas people who signed that dotted line, we actually made that choice and did it on our own and a few other things. Not forgetting that whole type of other military regarding scuba divers that you have continued to ignore. And what is the situation? So you go and have the little COVID thing go on, and all of the issues as far as veterans' health care magically is no longer talked about because of the COVID stuff, yet you still have failed to take care of them in the proper way, with having the excuse, because that's all it is. It's an excuse as far as the COVID, right? I mean, I could be wrong, but there sure were a whole bunch of like realistic, relevant reports of the amount of veterans who were having problems getting taken care of properly. And in comparison to actually doing something about it, the way at the time President Donald J. Trump, 45, was, a lot of stuff has changed. And since Trump at the time, 45, yeah, I mean, we got current President of the United States of America, Joe Biden, and current Vice President of the United States of America, Kamala Harris. And National Guard was not deployed in any area with the exception of like actual emergencies from what was reported, compared to, well, we don't like the election results and we have our feelings that are being hurt because a whole bunch of college students are where, and like, oh wow. And then there's all these people who have different opinions and like, oh wow, they've got words. I thought that like people who do legislation probably know how to use words. Or am I mistaken on that? And that's something that also took a head injury to figure out. Or maybe it shouldn't have ever taken a head injury to figure that out to begin with. Then, in regards to all of those who were like, hey, in reference to me, oh, you can't get into college. Well, I was in college when I was in high school. And when I graduated high school a semester early, after having to work the equivalent of getting a year and a half worth of schooling done in about a 9-month period. I mean, yeah, sure, I can't get into college now. But then again, I did say if it ever gets to the point where I can get into college, then anybody who ever made comments about my intellect, well, that definitely doesn't take a head injury to figure out. Should think about that and not abuse the National Guard or anybody who has honorably done the best that they could, especially when it comes to the United States of America's Armed Forces. However, I admit I have my bias. So you guys have a good one and think about that, especially with this weekend coming up. And then Memorial Day is coming up at the end of the month. Let me guess, a whole bunch of photo ops. Maybe even some random interviews, right? Maybe you'll even find some people who are veterans, or maybe they're willing to dress up, which then there's that problem. And be like, let's talk about Memorial Day. Because, elected official stuff, right? In comparison to genuinely being grateful, genuinely being appreciative. and also genuinely understanding which jobs are actually for which jobs, in comparison to having the National Guard doing what the Capitol Police and Austin Police Department you hired on to do. So they, as in the National Guard, don't get actually paid extra for doing that. By the way, Austin Police Department, they don't get paid extra. That is part of their job. They don't have the option because otherwise, because of UCMJ, even though, Governor Abbott actually has broken laws by deploying the National Guard. It is in not just the UCMJ, but it's also in state legislature as well as local legislature, but of course in federal legislature. If you did not look into that, that is not anybody's problem but yours. And you do have those who have the capability to look. I hope they find the exact legislatures to get that taken care of, by section number, and then subsection number, and subsection to the subsection numbers and letters. But then again, what would I know? It would only mean, okay, you guys have a good one. And let's do better now, okay? Awesome!